Okay, I actually want to talk about the differences. It's something we've talked about since we were literally 15, but the differences between jealousy, envy, and
Resentment.
resentment and the impact each has on a relationship. I think we use the words interchangeably way too much.
Mm,
Yeah,
I agree with you. And you know that my big one is that R word,
the R
not
word.
that R word, but resentment, obviously. Resentment is a very dangerous thing, and it can be a very difficult thing to come back from because people don't communicate. But also, sometimes you have such a deep resentment, and sometimes it's almost rightfully so. Sometimes people do really terrible things to you, and you resent them, and you resent the situation, and you resent how you responded to said
Mm.
situation. So,
And it festers over time. And I think
mhm,
that is what makes it almost impossible to come back from,
yeah,
is the fact that it has festered for so long. On the other end, I think jealousy is completely normal and natural.
to a certain extent.
I agree. If you're not an insecure person that projects your jealousy onto
Hmm.
others, I think it's perfectly normal to feel jealous of friends, colleagues, family members. I think as long as you recognize it in yourself and you're like, okay, I'm jealous.
Hmm.
What does that mean? How am I going to change my life or whatever else that may be? It's fine. Now, if you make your jealousy everybody else's problem, yeah, you're going to have to take a step back and
Pack
leave.
it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Envy. We're going to get into examples of all of this, mind you, because we have so much to say.
Hmm.
But envy, I feel like, is different than jealousy because envy is something that you can never have.
Mm.
And I don't really think that, I think it's similar to resentment in the sense that if somebody's deeply envious of you, there is really no healing that relationship. But it's also similar to jealousy in the sense that if you can recognize that you're envious
Hmm.
and you don't project that envy and you deal with it however you deal with things in a healthy way, hopefully,
Yeah.
then you can move on from it. And what I mean is, like, I could be jealous that somebody got a job that's really well paying. And I'm like, damn, like,
And it's momentary also. Sometimes
mm-hmm.
I would say before you sit here and say, you should never be jealous of your friends, and I'm never jealous of my friends, keep in mind, it's possible that you lack introspection. That's one thing. I'm not saying that you are automatically jealous of your friends. Not at all. But I am saying sometimes you might not even realize it. Sometimes as a person, you're like, you catch yourself and you're like, why am I feeling this way? And it's very brief. It could be something that comes and go, and it is as little as 5 minutes, and you're kind of sitting there and you're like, damn. You know what I mean? It's not
Yeah.
always
And I think it's similar with
something that
envy.
festers.
And I feel like with jealousy, it is something that can be brief. It doesn't even have to be brief, but it's something that
Hmm.
in theory is attainable to you, right? Like
Mm,
getting a higher paying job in theory is something that you could get.
right.
Envy is like someone's relationship with their family. You know what I mean? Could you, in theory, develop a similar relationship?
Hmm.
Yeah, but probably not. There's probably something in particular that you're envious of.
Hmm.
Now, if you acknowledge that hurt and you acknowledge whatever impact that had on you and you move on, it's perfectly fine. Now, when you get into the space of like feeling annoyed that this person has this kind of relationship dynamic, getting irritated when you hear about it, we have some work to do on ourselves. And I think the other flip side of envy is feeling like you deserve something that somebody else has.
Hmm.
Like jealousy is just saying, oh, you have a high paying job. I want a high paying job. I think the flip side, or at least how I define envy, because my definitions are the only ones that matter, is you have a high paying job and you shouldn't have it. I deserve a high paying job.
What have you ever done to deserve that high paying job?
Exactly.
I will say envy and jealousy definitely, I think, sometimes kind of intertwine with each other just a little bit. I would also say the slight difference that I would say for me personally when describing envy, it's something that you feel like you can't attain. It's not necessarily always something you can't attain. It's something that you deep down in your bones feel like you can never have. And that's why it's so unbelievably frustrating.
I actually love that. I never thought about it that way. Perhaps, yeah, that actually is attainable, but due to whatever world you've constructed in your mind, you feel like it's something that you yourself will never have. Um, and that gets into the conversation of if that is true, or you feel like that's true, is there any coming back from that in the relationship? I don't think so.
When you get to a certain level of emotion, at least, I'm not going to say like how I feel like, because obviously if I'm stating it's how I feel. When you get to a certain level of jealousy, envy, or resentment, there's an underlining almost sadness or anger, if not both, that can almost become very dangerous. It can become a very dangerous thing for yourself. It can be a very dangerous thing for the other person. And you dehumanize that other person in the process. You almost feel like everything they do is in spite of you.
Yeah.
They're throwing everything in your face. And that's not necessarily true. Now, some bitches are shady and rude and evil and mean and all of the things. And maybe they are throwing things in your face and it makes them feel better about themselves. But at that point, it comes back to you or me or us to evaluate that and move accordingly. I don't need to be in this relationship anymore. Either way, it really comes down to that is this a sustainable relationship, and is it mutually beneficial for us both?
I think another layer of that, and we're going to have an episode on this, is that sometimes there is no jealousy, envy, or resentment. And maybe there just isn't even a growing apart, but you come to the conclusion that a relationship is not for you anymore. And it actually is really hard.
And that's okay.
For somebody to not have done anything to you, for you to still feel like you're in similar places in life, but to be like, I just don't want to be friends with you anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think anyone talks about that. I felt so guilty, kind of being, like, feeling like I don't even want to have the conversation, actually. I'm going to ghost you. Which, I'm not supporting ghosting, and in hindsight, I'm like, I should not have ghosted that person or done or behaved the way I did. But it is, in many ways, I don't know, I view relationships and having difficult conversations in relationships as something that you only do if you deeply value that relationship, if you want to continue the friendship or continue the kind of dynamic you have. If I have no interest in it, I genuinely have no interest in having that uncomfortable conversation because I don't care. I've clocked out.
And you know what? And that's a really great, and I use the word perspective a lot, but it really is a very interesting perspective because it's one of those things where somebody could be listening to this right now. Also, hi, thanks for tuning in to Post-Disclosure Clarity. But it's one of those things where
Post-Disclosure Podcast, baby, drop the clarity.
I'm sorry. Actually, I'm not even a huge fan of the clarity. So I said that. I'm sorry. I apologize. Notes app apology coming soon. But as I was saying, it's one of those things where you can sit here and try to judge Saharla for saying, if I have no interest in furthering that relationship, then I'll just will disappear. And you could argue on the other end of that, if it's a long-term relationship and a really close friendship, especially, it could be heartbreaking for them. But also, we can get into the fact that sometimes, like you said, some relationships just kind of fizzle out naturally. And it's not always you just completely ghosting them. Sometimes you just naturally over time just stop interacting with each other and you just become mutuals.
Yeah, but I'm not even talking about that situation because I think that's a mutual kind of thing that you both notice.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it's more of
dead ass ghosted her.
Yeah, no, I didn't ghost her.
Hey girl, if you see this.
Hey girl, if you see this.
Hey.
But it was more of like, oh yeah, for sure. Oh yeah, for sure. Oh yeah, for sure.
Oh,
and
that's painful.
And I don't know what to say. I'm not going to sit here and claim to be the good person for doing that, or a good person or the good person, the dynamic for doing that. I'm not. I was wrong for that. But
it's the truth. It's honest.
It's what happened, and I can't I can't genuinely say I won't do it again.
And you know what? I think this is one of those times where you have introspection and you're like, you might have done that yourself. I've probably done it myself too. Actually, I have done it myself. And I'm not going to say her name, but you know that there's a person. They can probably hear that. I'm sorry. It's like an ASMR mic. It's picking up everything. Where we did have a relationship and I did feel that it was unbalanced and I did feel like we didn't need to be friends anymore. And I did let her know. And I wasn't necessarily looking for a conversation. It wasn't a breakup. Well, I mean, it was the end of our relationship, but it wasn't like a boyfriend and girlfriend breakup.
It was notification.
Yeah, I sent her a good paragraph of explaining I just don't feel that we are connected anymore. I feel like we just don't need to be friends in a very nice way. And she left it on read and we've never spoke again since.
Amen. Honestly, that's probably for the best.
And you know what? Yeah. Also, when we're defining ghosting, I think it's such an interesting topic because sometimes people have a huge victim complex and they claim that they're being ghosted when they're not.
You are never entitled to that level of communication.
Mm. And this is obviously for specific situations, and obviously it's subjective to what you think is a close relationship. But if we went out on a singular date, or we're not particularly close, we didn't have a serious relationship, and we simply don't talk anymore, I don't necessarily think that that is ghosting. I think when there is a deep emotional involvement, that's when it becomes ghosting. But I don't think it's fair for you to say that somebody you matched with on Tinder and they stop texting you on Tinder, you haven't even exchanged socials yet, he doesn't have your number or she doesn't have your number, them not wanting to communicate with you anymore is not ghosting.
I do think, though, if you go on a date and you don't respond afterwards and the person like repeatedly tries to get in contact with you and you don't respond, you are ghosting them.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you both don't reach out, y'all both knew there was not shit there. You know what I mean? But if that person does reach out, I do think that to a certain extent, and I've always done this, hey, I don't think there was chemistry.
Yeah, I've sent that
Wish you
message
the
out
best.
before too as well.
Yeah.
So it's very complicated. And I think also, I think I should elaborate more specifically if it's a situation where you were made uncomfortable.
Ghost them.
They're not entitled to you sending them a 6-page essay on how you feel and how they made you feel
I will
uncomfortable.
ghost you in real life.
Damn.
If you make me uncomfortable on a date, I will pretend I'm going to the bathroom and leave.
And that also is a safety thing as well. So I do want to elaborate when I mean not reaching out anymore. If it was genuinely, it seemed like a nice date and they seemed like a nice person and they message you a few times and you're like, hey, I'm okay, I'm just not interested in going on another date. Yeah, that's great. Awesome. But if you go out and you feel very uncomfortable, or they made you feel uncomfortable, or they put their hands on you, or whatever other reason, you are not a bad person for not communicating with them or giving them access to your person anymore. You don't have to do that. That is not ghosting, and you're not a bad person. You're not a bad communicator at all.
100%. Shout out to the kids who are listening to this. You guys needed to hear that. As for everybody else, I guess y'all need to hear it too. But no, 100%. But I also don't want to get into a thing of like what kind of behavior is acceptable when. Like this is, I don't want to turn into a thing of like Saharla and Bella are co-signing certain behaviors and not going to co-sign certain behaviors, or telling you when certain things are acceptable. Not to say that you have to listen to anything we say, but I don't want that to be the dynamic. In the sense that I feel very strongly that a huge thing that I want out of this podcast is the ability to just say what I think without a disclaimer.
In the moment.
Without saying that in this situation it's fine. And that's like, no, please refer to a hard fiction book. Go read Toni Morrison or something. Go read a book that you have to think while you read it, not some alien smut. And once you develop some critical thinking skills, come back.
Listen to the way you feel as well. Like I said, and that's why I use the word perspective so often and subjective so often, because it really does matter. And I'm not you and you're not me. And you need to be able to navigate these situations and know what you're going to do and when and why. Maybe not even why. No is a full sentence.
No is a full sentence. No, period.
No, absolutely not.